Have you ever felt like money hears everyone else, but not you? Like no matter how clearly you ask, how carefully you plan, how hard you try, there's a silence where an answer should be. You work, you wait, you hope, and yet money doesn't move. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't deserve it, but because something unseen keeps interrupting the signal. Think about this for a moment. Have you noticed how money feels alive when you're calm, but heavy and distant when you're anxious? How one unexpected expense can shift your entire mood, while one unexpected gain feels like relief instead of joy? That's not coincidence. That's relationship. And most people are in a relationship with money they don't even realize they're in. A relationship built on fear, on distance, on constantly calling out without being heard. You don't just want more money. You want the tension to stop. You want to breathe again. You want to feel safe when you think about tomorrow. And the painful part is this. The more urgent the need becomes, the quieter money feels. The harder you chase, the further it seems to move. Have you ever wondered why? Why money responds instantly to some people, while others feel like they're always knocking on a locked door? Why opportunities appear naturally for some, while others feel like they're always late, always one step behind? What if the problem isn't effort? What if money doesn't respond to force at all? What if money responds the same way people do, not to shouting, but to familiarity? Because when someone calls your name with confidence, you listen. But when someone begs, explains, or panics, something closes, and money behaves the same way, not because it's cruel, but because it mirrors the state it's addressed from. And once you understand that, once you feel that shift, you realize something quietly powerful. Money was never ignoring you. It simply didn't recognize how you were calling it, and that realization changes everything. Before anything else, let this settle in your mind. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not careless with money. You are not weak. You are not failing some invisible test that others passed more easily. You were taught a way of thinking about money that quietly creates pressure, fear, and distance, and almost everyone was taught the same way. From the beginning, money was introduced to you as something serious, heavy, and scarce, something that causes arguments, something that runs out, something you have to worry about. So naturally, every thought of money began carrying tension. You didn't choose that tension, it formed slowly over years. Each time you saw adults stress over bills, each time you heard phrases like, "money doesn't grow on trees," or "we can't afford that." Each time you felt embarrassed asking for something and were told to wait. Over time, money stopped feeling neutral. It started feeling emotional. And the mind learned something dangerous without realizing it, that money equals pressure. So when you think about money now, your body reacts before your logic does. A tightening in the chest, a subtle anxiety, a quiet voice asking, "What if it doesn't work out?" That reaction is not a flaw, it is conditioning. And you are not alone in it. Most people carry money beliefs they never consciously chose. They inherited them. They absorbed them. They repeated them without questioning. And then they blamed themselves when results didn't change. But here is the truth you need to hear clearly. Money does not respond to effort alone, and it never has. Some of the hardest working people live in constant financial tension. Some of the calmest people experience consistent flow. That contrast is not accidental. It points to something deeper than work ethic. You were taught that trying harder would bring relief, that worrying meant responsibility, that struggling meant you were doing your best. But the subconscious mind does not reward struggle. It reflects the state it is impressed with. And when struggle becomes familiar, it repeats, not to punish you, but to remain consistent. This is why guilt is so damaging. When you feel guilty about past money choices, you are not being humble. You are rehearsing the identity of someone who messes things up. And the subconscious accepts that identity without argument. This is why telling yourself, "I need to fix this," often makes things feel worse. Because fixing implies brokenness, and you were never broken. You were operating from survival instead of certainty. There is a huge difference. Survival thinks in emergencies. Certainty thinks in assumptions. Survival asks, What if I lose? Certainty quietly expects. Of course it works out. And here's something important. Certainty is not confidence. It is not excitement. It is not forcing positive thoughts. Certainty is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain. It doesn't defend itself. It simply knows. You have felt this state before, even if briefly. Maybe during a moment when you just knew something would work out, and it did. Maybe when you made a decision and felt peaceful instead of anxious. Maybe when you stopped thinking and everything aligned naturally. That was certainty. And money responds to that state the same way life does. Not because money is intelligent, but because your subconscious is. And your subconscious shapes your experience with precision. So if money has felt distant, heavy, or unresponsive, it doesn't mean you're bad at it. It means your inner state has been shaped by years of pressure, not by truth. And pressure can be unlearned. Not through force. Not through more effort, but through understanding. Once you feel emotionally safe with money again, once your nervous system relaxes instead of tenses, everything begins to shift. Because money flows most easily toward a calm mind, and calm is not something you earn. It's something you allow, and you are allowed to feel calm about money starting now. Most people believe money problems are external. They think the issue is income, timing, opportunity, or luck. They look outward for causes and solutions. But the real problem operates quietly inside the mind, long before numbers ever change. And this is where almost everyone goes wrong without realizing it. They try to fix money with effort, when money responds to assumption. From morning to night, people speak about money as if it is a problem to manage, a threat to avoid, or a resource that might disappear at any moment. They say things like, "I have to be careful. I can't afford that right now. I need to make this work. I hope something comes through." None of these sound harmful. They sound responsible. But to the subconscious mind, they all mean the same thing. Money is uncertain. Money is unstable. Money is not here yet. And the subconscious does not judge those messages. It does not argue with them. It simply accepts them as instructions. This is why repetition alone does not create change. You can repeat positive phrases all day long, but if your inner posture is tense, worried, or desperate, the subconscious listens to the posture, not the words. Effort does not impress the subconscious. Emotion does. And the strongest emotion around money for most people is fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of losing control, fear of repeating past mistakes. So even when someone says, "Money comes easily to me," their body often feels tight, guarded, and doubtful. And the subconscious responds to that feeling, not the sentence. This is the hidden contradiction. People try to attract money while proving to themselves that it's hard. They check their accounts repeatedly. They calculate every possible outcome. They replay worst-case scenarios in their mind. They believe they're being smart. But what they're actually doing is reinforcing an identity. I am someone who must struggle to stay afloat. An identity is powerful. The subconscious always acts in ways that are consistent with identity, not because it wants to limit you, but because it wants to be accurate. So when someone constantly thinks, "I need to fix my money situation," the subconscious hears, "This situation is broken, and broken things require constant attention." This is why financial stress feels endless for so many people. They are stuck in a loop of monitoring, correcting, and worrying, all of which keep the same assumption alive. Here's the shift most people never make. Money does not move when you push it. It moves when resistance stops. And resistance often hides behind responsibility. You can work hard and still be resistant. You can plan carefully and still be resistant. You can save diligently and still be resistant. Because resistance is not about action. It's about inner stance. Are you relating to money as something you trust or something you must control? Are you assuming cooperation or bracing for disappointment? This is why some people seem to get lucky. They're not luckier. They're calmer. They expect money to show up in ordinary ways. They don't dramatize delays. They don't internalize temporary setbacks. Their inner dialogue is different. Instead of saying, "What if this doesn't work?" they think, "It always works out." Not loudly, not emotionally, just as a quiet baseline. and life mirrors that baseline. This is not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing that constantly naming the problem keeps it active. Every time you explain why money is hard, you keep teaching the subconscious that difficulty is normal. Every time you justify worry, you give it permission to stay. The problem isn't that you've been doing too little. It's that you've been doing too much of the wrong thing, mentally. You've been rehearsing scarcity instead of assuming flow. And the moment that assumption changes, even slightly, the entire system begins to respond differently, because money does not follow effort. It follows the path of least inner resistance. And that path begins the moment you stop treating money as a problem and start relating to it as something that naturally cooperates with you. That realization alone loosens the grip of struggle, and once struggle loosens, movement becomes possible, quietly, naturally. There is a law quietly operating behind every financial experience you've ever had. It is simple, impersonal, exact, and once you understand it, confusion begins to dissolve. Life does not respond to desire, it responds to impression. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious mind accepts whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and conviction, not effort, not repetition, and not force. The subconscious mind does not analyze reality, it reproduces it. Whatever state you live from internally becomes the pattern your outer world follows. This is why two people can earn the same income and live in completely different financial realities. One feels constantly behind, the other feels supported. The difference is not circumstance, it is assumption. An assumption is not a thought you argue with, it is a thought you no longer question, and the subconscious treats assumptions as facts. When something feels normal, the subconscious works to maintain it, not because it is good or bad, but because it is familiar. This is the reason financial patterns repeat so faithfully. If instability feels familiar, the subconscious recreates it. If flow feels familiar, it recreates that instead. This law is always active, and it is never personal. You are not being tested, you are not being judged, you are being reflected. Now here is the part most people miss. The subconscious mind does not respond to abstract ideas, it responds to personal meaning. Vague desires produce vague results, specific assumptions produce movement. This is why fear works so quickly. Fear is always personal, it names scenarios. It imagines outcomes, it feels real. Desire, on the other hand, is often treated like a wish, distant, uncertain, conditional. And the subconscious mirrors that distance. Joseph Murphy emphasized that the subconscious responds to the tone of certainty, not the content of words. You can say, "I am prosperous," 100 times, but if it feels foreign, the subconscious does nothing. But one calm assumption felt as normal can reorganize behavior, perception, and opportunity. Not magically, systematically, because the subconscious directs your attention, your decisions, and your expectations. And those shape results. Here is another crucial principle. The subconscious does not know the difference between what you experience and what you assume. It reacts to both as reality. This is why imagination, when felt as real, carries creative power. Not daydreaming, not fantasizing, but acceptance. When something is accepted internally, resistance ends. And where resistance ends, movement begins. This is the foundation of all change. Money, like every other experience, flows through this law. It responds not to hustle, not to struggle, not to emotional pleading, but to the inner climate you maintain. If your inner climate is tense, watchful, and defensive, money appears inconsistent. If your inner climate is calm, trusting, and expectant, money appears cooperative. This is not coincidence. It is cause and effect. Joseph Murphy often said that life responds to the dominant mental attitude, not the occasional thought, not the forced affirmation. The dominant attitude, what you return to when nothing is happening, what you feel when you stop thinking, that state is the true instruction. And here is where power returns to you. Because attitudes can be changed, not by fighting them, but by understanding them. When you see that struggle has been a habit rather than a requirement, you stop identifying with it. You realize you've been impressing the subconscious with urgency, fear, and effort, not because you wanted to, but because you believed it was necessary. And the moment that belief loosens, new assumptions become possible. You don't need to force belief, you need to allow normality to change. To let ease feel ordinary, to let support feel expected, to let money feel responsive rather than distant. And once that shift happens internally, the Lord does the rest, quietly, faithfully. Here is the moment where everything comes together. Not as a technique, not as a ritual, but as an understanding. Money does not respond when you chase it. It responds when you recognize it. Most people speak about money as if it is distant, delayed, or conditional. They say, when I get more money, I'll feel safe. When things improve, I'll relax. When the situation changes, then I'll trust. But that order is backwards. Money responds after the inner state shifts, never before. And this is the key realization. When you call something by name, you assume relationship, you assume familiarity, you assume response. You don't call out to strangers with authority, you call those you know. This is why calling money by name is not symbolic. It is psychological. It moves money from an abstract idea into a recognized presence. When money is abstract, the mind treats it as uncertain. When it is recognized, the mind treats it as responsive. And the subconscious always follows recognition. This is not about saying words emotionally. It's not about chanting or pleading. In fact, emotion weakens this process, because emotion implies need, and need implies absence. Calling money by name is effective only when it is done calmly, as if you are addressing something that already listens. Because calmness signals certainty, and certainty is the language of the subconscious. Here's what most people miss. The subconscious does not respond to volume, it responds to finality. When you speak from finality, there is no internal argument, no follow-up explanation, no waiting energy, just assumption. This is why a single sentence, spoken once with quiet authority, can do more than years of repetition spoken from anxiety. The power is not in the words. The power is in the state they come from. When you call money by name from certainty, you are not asking for permission. You are acknowledging presence, and acknowledgement is powerful, because the subconscious organizes perception around what is acknowledged as real. Once money feels real internally, not as a worry, not as a problem, but as something familiar, your behavior changes automatically. You notice opportunities you would have ignored. You make decisions without hesitation. You stop sabotaging flow with overthinking, not consciously, naturally. Because the subconscious begins operating from a new assumption. Money responds to me. And the outer world rearranges itself to match that assumption. Not dramatically, not instantly in all cases, but consistently. This is why the change often feels subtle at first. A calmer reaction to expenses, a quieter confidence around decisions, less emotional charge when thinking about money. These are signs that the subconscious has accepted a new relationship. And once that acceptance happens, money no longer feels like something you must manage every second. It feels cooperative. You stop scanning for danger. You stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You stop bracing for loss. And when resistance leaves, movement begins. This is the real meaning behind calling your money. It is not calling something that is absent. It is recognizing something that is already capable of response. The moment you stop treating money like a problem to solve and start treating it like a relationship to acknowledge, you step into authority. Authority does not force. It does not rush. It does not beg. Authority expects. Quietly, an expectation is creative. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized assumption over effort. Because assumption sets the direction. Effort without assumption is noise. Assumption without effort reorganizes behavior effortlessly, and once you understand this, the pressure lifts. You realize you don't have to monitor money constantly. You don't have to fight every fluctuation. You don't have to emotionally react to every number. You only have to maintain recognition, because recognition keeps the channel open, and the channel opens not through desire, but through certainty. This is the shift. This is the payoff. Money does not arrive because you need it. It arrives because you speak to it as something that already knows your voice. And once that voice changes, money listens. Understanding a principle is one thing. Seeing it reflected in real life is another. Because belief doesn't strengthen through theory, it strengthens through recognition. Not recognition of miracles, but recognition of patterns. A man once spent years moving from one financial emergency to another, nothing catastrophic, just constant instability. Every month felt like a calculation, every decision felt risky. He believed the issue was income, so he worked harder, took extra shifts, accepted stress as normal, yet the pattern stayed. What changed things was not a raise, it was an internal shift. He stopped addressing money as something unpredictable. He stopped speaking about it as if it could betray him at any moment. Instead, he began acknowledging money calmly as something that responded, no excitement, no desperation, just familiarity. Within a short time, consistency appeared, not through one dramatic event, but through small, steady changes. Payments arrived on time, unexpected gaps were filled. Decisions felt clearer, nothing mystical, just alignment. Another example came from a woman who lived with constant anxiety around spending. Even when money was available, she felt unsafe. Every purchase triggered guilt. Every bill felt threatening. She realized that her relationship with money was defined by fear, not facts. Instead of trying to think positive, she changed how she internally addressed money. She stopped speaking about it. She spoke to it, calmly, respectfully, without emotion. The anxiety softened first. Then her behavior changed. She stopped over-controlling, stopped delaying necessary decisions, stopped assuming loss. Opportunities that had been present all along suddenly felt visible. Her income didn't jump overnight, but stability returned. And stability is the foundation of growth. Then there was someone who felt blocked professionally. Talented, capable, yet always overlooked. Money was inconsistent because opportunity was inconsistent. He believed others had advantages he didn't. What shifted things was a single assumption. Instead of seeing money as something granted by others, he began assuming response. That assumption altered how he showed up. He spoke differently, negotiated calmly, stopped underselling himself, and others responded accordingly. The outer change followed the inner one. This pattern repeats because it is law. When resistance dissolves internally, cooperation appears externally. You see this not just in finances, but everywhere. People who expect respect receive it. People who expect rejection encounter it. Money behaves the same way. It mirrors expectation, not desire. An expectation is built through familiarity. What all these examples share is not technique, it is tone. A tone of calm recognition rather than effort. They stopped trying to get money and started assuming response. This removed urgency, and urgency was the blockage, because urgency signals lack, and lack is self-reinforcing. When the urgency left, space opened, and money moved through that space naturally. This is why the process feels so simple once it's understood, because the complexity was never required. The struggle was learned, and what is learned can be unlearned, not through force, but through awareness. Each of these people stopped fighting an invisible battle. They stopped proving worth. They stopped arguing with life. They adjusted one assumption, and reality followed, quietly, faithfully. And that is how you know this is real. It does not require belief. It produces results through alignment. When inner resistance ends, outer movement begins, always, no exceptions, because life mirrors the state you consistently return to. And when that state becomes calm recognition, money responds. Now everything becomes practical, not complicated, not time-consuming, not dramatic, because this principle only works when it is simple enough to feel natural. The first thing to understand is this. You do not apply this method when you are panicked. You do not apply it when you are emotionally charged, and you do not apply it when you are trying to fix something urgently. Urgency is the opposite of authority, so the practice always begins in calm moments, moments where nothing is happening, moments where there is no immediate pressure, moments where your nervous system is relaxed. This is when the subconscious is most receptive. Choose one quiet moment each day. It does not need to be long. 30 seconds is enough. In that moment, you are not asking for money, you are not visualizing outcomes, you are not reviewing problems, you are simply acknowledging relationship. You speak one short sentence internally or softly, not emotionally, not repeatedly. a sentence that implies familiarity and response, not future-based, not hopeful. Present, then you stop, you do not repeat it, you do not check how you feel afterward, you do not look for signs, you let it settle. Why? Because repetition signals doubt. Certainty speaks once. This is why over-affirming often backfires. The subconscious hears repetition as persuasion. Persuasion implies uncertainty. So you speak once and let silence do the work. Next, you practice restraint during the day. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They speak correctly in quiet moments, then undo it through casual inner dialogue. Statements like, "I hope nothing goes wrong. This is tight right now. I need to be careful." Again, these sound responsible, but they quietly reintroduce resistance. So the practice is not forcing positive thoughts, it is reducing negative commentary. When you notice yourself explaining money problems internally, you pause. You don't correct it aggressively, you don't fight the thought, you simply stop feeding it. Silence is powerful. The subconscious treats silence as neutrality, and neutrality dissolves patterns. Another practical application is how you respond to delays. Delays are where old identities surface. When something doesn't arrive immediately, the mind wants to interpret it. What if this doesn't work? What if I misjudged? What if it gets worse? Instead of answering those questions, you disengage, you return to assumption, not by repeating words, but by maintaining calm. Calm is the signal. If your body remains relaxed, the subconscious receives the message. There is no threat, and when there is no threat, it stops recreating one. You also apply this principle in decision-making. When money decisions are made from fear, they reinforce fear. When they are made from calm expectation, they reinforce flow. So before decisions you pause, not to analyze more, but to check your state. If you feel rushed, pressured, or tense, you wait. Because decisions made from urgency imprint urgency. Waiting for calm is not avoidance, it is intelligence. Another important application is how you speak about money with others. Complaining reinforces scarcity, joking about being broke reinforces identity. Bonding over struggle reinforces struggle. You don't need to correct others, but you can choose neutrality, less commentary, less explanation, less emotional charge, and neutrality opens space. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to declare instability as truth. Finally, the most powerful application happens before sleep. The subconscious is most open then. Not to long routines, not to effort, just to final impressions. Before sleep, you return to recognition. One calm sentence, one assumption, then rest. Sleep is when the subconscious reorganizes patterns, and what you impress last becomes dominant. This is how identity changes quietly. No force, no struggle, just consistency. And consistency is not repetition of words, it is repetition of state. The more often you return to calm recognition, the more natural it becomes. And when something becomes natural, it becomes automatic. That is when money begins to move without your involvement. Not because you're trying harder, but because resistance has stopped interrupting the flow. This is practical. This is usable. This is sustainable. Because you are not adding effort to your life. You are removing interference. And when interference is removed, money responds naturally.